How do you not have time with your family on a plane that's commercial versus private, when if you went commercial, you'd be going first class anyway?
Hello, welcome to Startup 360, Budri Gamawara from the Gadigal lands here in Sydney. I'm Simon Thomsen, co-host of Startup 360, editor of StartupDaily.net, and beside me is my co-pilot, co-host and...
Amateur volleyball player.
Amateur volleyball player.
I joined a social volleyball team recently.
And how is that working out for you?
It's okay.
How are the knees?
I've only dived once.
Yeah.
But my name is Kayla Medica. That's
well done. I was just a test to see if you could remember.
barely.
Had a good week so far?
Manic. And everyone I speak to this week is manic. I don't know what's in the water.
Before we get into today's show, I do want to say that Startup 360 is supported by Vanta, helping startups unlock market opportunities through automated compliance. Next Tuesday is going to be the federal budget. I did write a piece this week from Fintech Australia on the things that are concerning them. R&D tax incentive is big. Of course, the open banking CDR thing is also an issue. I know a few people in fintech space are not happy with the focus. And of course, the guy who's been overseeing this, Stephen Jones, is sailing off into the sunset at this election. So,
Isn't that like the whole reason people become politicians is to sail off into the sunset?
Sail off into their investment properties.
And get their board seats at Telstra and Optus?
All of that. But I think that CDR, everyone's a little bit worried that the wind is completely coming out of the sails, speaking of sailing, for this particular issue. We are going to have a couple of great guests today, speaking of fintech, so I should actually mention that before we get into anything else. We are fantastic. As you said, we're building the plane today, but we actually forgot to buy wings, which I think is my favourite part of today's plane. But we've got a couple of great guests. For our 10X Rapid Fire session, we're going to speak to Ben Ford, who I've known for a long time in the fintech sector, advisor, great advocate for it. Oyster lover, loves the Narooma Oyster Festival, and also a fitness freak. So we're going to talk to him about that, and maybe I can pick up a couple of tips. And then our other guest is the founder of Paper and Spark, Zeina Khodr, who's going to talk to us marketing. You guys are going to get along famously. You're going to have a great chat on that front. But let's go back to our themes for this thing. Speaking of marketing, very nice marketing there. Beautiful product placement.
Yeah, see, this is what happens when you run out of whiteboard ideas. You just spruik your own stuff. So, yeah, if you're interested in marketing, especially B2B SaaS marketing, subscribe to my newsletter, medica.substack.com. This week...
And don't forget to buy the book.
And buy the book, Medica
Matt,
Method.
can we get a long shot? It's just here on the coffee table. It is a good book. I've read it. It's got pictures and everything, so I can understand.
It does have pictures.
Yes.
But, yeah, this week's Medica issue is about... The topics are so specific. This week was how to promote that you have a company newsletter and where to place the email captures and what copy to put and all that kind of stuff. So if you're really deep in the weeds of B2B SaaS marketing, my newsletter is for you.
Now, when you think you'll be successful enough to buy yourself a Bombardier 7500 private jet?
I would probably have to marry up significantly.
Well, I know a guy who's got one and probably will be single very soon, so there are opportunities. The story, of course, this week is Mike Cannon-Brookes. The AFR outed him for having this private jet, and of course they love teasing him as Double Bay Jesus, and because of his climate credentials, they're going, how does this work? Cannon-Brookes then jumped on LinkedIn, and he made the point that, well, there are a couple of reasons why I'm doing it. One, so I've got more time with my family and my kids while I'm running a global empire. And the other part is for my personal security, which he said was a necessary thing. And I just thought, who the hell is trying to kill Mike Cannon-Brookes at this point in time?
So I'm still hung up on the fact that the reason he was on a private jet was to go to the F1, presumably to spend time with his family. So how do you not have time with your family on a plane that's commercial versus private, when if you went commercial, you'd be going first class anyway?
I can tell you, if I could just get a chopper from the top of Barangaroo here to the inner west, land on a Marrickville pub, and then just, go home to see my family.
Yeah. If only we all could have private jets and not care about the environment, the world would be a better place.
The other big thing I want to talk to you about this week is ideas, because one of the conversations I've been having is the sense that there is a lack of ideas happening in the startup sector. We've kind of run out, we've done all the iterations of BNPLs we can do. We've done all the SaaS for B2B we can do. There's nothing new coming. I think there's some good deep tech stuff around, but there's a sense that, especially from an investment VC point of view, because those guys look for a very specific narrow rail of types of startups, that nothing much is around.
Yeah. So my hot take and 2 cents on this is that I have been seeing, not so much in Australia, but like American VCs announcing like 60 million Series A, and then it's like in an e-commerce company, and you're like, okay, that's not very... Who really gives a shit? Let's be honest. Like, that's not really going to do much for the world. But the other thing is that so many people now have glamorized being a founder, being an entrepreneur, that there's a whole host of people who just start businesses with that in mind, and they're not actually starting a business because they've encountered a serious problem that they're driven to solve. So there's more and more people who are, creating companies that are in industries that they've never worked in or whatever, because they're just trying to capture almost like a fleeting chance at being a 10x founder.
Do you think founder is the new influencer? I mean, 10 years ago, we all wanted to be influencers, and that's how we were going to get rich. And then it turned into podcaster. And maybe it's like, founders are just failed influencers and podcasters.
I mean, look, there's people like Jane Liu who really walks the line between founder and influencer, like her social media and her...
She just gives good brand game.
I mean, she's a great marketer.
Yeah, totally.
But like her becoming a personality and being on Shark Tank, and like half of the Showpo ads are about her now, because it's like she's the aspirational one that people want to be. So yeah, I think it is possible that people see that and think, I want that too. But she is definitely the exception, not the rule.
I did get a pitch from the PR today for someone who, she said, maybe you've never heard of them, and she was absolutely right on that front. They're on some reality TV show, and what they're doing is a line of vodka with coconut water sparkling. So it counts
so
like fizzy Malibu.
But it's got a health twist, so all the... whatever.
I just thought, if you're going to drink excessively and projectile vomit, that's probably the best thing to throw up.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of innovation in the FMCG world and in new products and new trends and stuff like that, but I just find it so...
We've done a lot of influencer booze lines, and I can tell you, most of those, about 18 months down the track, end up in a BWS on a heavy discount.
Yeah, it's almost like, how can we squeeze money out of consumers, rather than like there is actually a gap in the market and people are looking for this thing and it doesn't exist.
Should we just stop rabbiting on to each other and get someone who's actually really interesting, Zeina Khodr, in to talk to us?
Are you saying that I'm not interesting?
You're fascinating.
Let's get her in.
Always absolutely entranced by everything you have to say. You know that, Kayla.
All right.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back. We have our first guest, Zeina Khodr, founder of Paper and Spark. Welcome to the show.
Very happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
So tell us about Paper and Spark. What is it all about?
So Paper and Spark has been around for 6 years now. We are a creative-led, insights and data-driven marketing and communications agency, and we work with key verticals in the industry, everything from financial services to renewable energies to big pharma and everything in between.
So how did you get started?
So I founded Paper and Spark 6 years ago. I worked for one of the biggest advertising agencies at the time, J. Walter Thompson, sadly not around anymore. Been around for 185 years until they merged. I was asked to come over and set up a new agency to really tackle the world of always-on content and social media for them in around 2015. Prior to that, I used to be group publisher across a whole range of titles, working for Read Business Information. So my background is actually working for .coms and then in publishing, and then finally found myself in the world of advertising and agencies for the first time about 10 years ago. So that was my first entree into the world of how sort of agencies worked.
You've been looking at AI a fair bit, and I know this is a big issue in marketing and advertising at the moment, and who will stay and who will go as a consequence. Give us a little bit of Zeina's take on what you're thinking and what you're seeing and how you're applying it in your business.
It's interesting that you asked that question. I mean, we get asked about this daily from clients, right? Everyone's sort of embracing the wild world of AI. I was at South by Southwest a couple of years ago, and I heard still a totally relevant analogy today. It was by John Meter, who was one of the sort of the thinkers around sort of AI, and he likened it to a ketchup sauce bottle, a glass ketchup sauce bottle, that if you're turning it upside down, you're trying to scrape out that bit of ketchup and you're shaking it, then all of a sudden all of the ketchup spurts out. That's kind of like the AI moment we've been having over the last couple of years. It's just sort of everywhere. It's all encompassing. It's in the conversations. Everyone's trying to tackle how to deal with AI, how to use it in every day, how to use it sort of as a process tool, as an optimization tool, and it's certainly occupying a lot of thinking and talking space at the moment. So,
and it drowns out the flavour of what you actually want to eat.
Pretty much. I mean, we've just published a white paper that clients have been asking us for. We talk a lot about storytelling and content creation, and it is a lot about how do you actually stay human in the world of AI storytelling. Yes, you've got these amazing tools at your disposal, but how do you sort of, still stay relevant, still stay authentic? And I think that's going to still be top of people's minds, but also, we use the tools daily. I mean, they're just built into everything that we use, without thinking about it. You use Teams, it's in Microsoft Copilot. We use Adobe, it's in Firefly. For smaller businesses who use Canva, AI is now really built into everything that we're using. So definitely transforming how we work without even realizing it.
Yeah. Do you think there's too many people thinking about AI and not enough people doing?
Look, I think it's certainly a huge topic of conversation. I think people are doing without realising that they're doing, to be honest with you. As I said, a lot of these tools are now sort of inbuilt into particularly productivity tools. So it depends on the industry. Certainly our clients, particularly in highly regulated environments, are thinking about how they're going to be using AI, the copyright issues, what it means for them, how do they sort of start to embrace some of these tools. So yes, still lots of conversations, a bit of doing, and still trying to navigate the way. Still a bit of a Wild West, if you ask me.
So when you look at, the Wild West and all the cowboys out there shooting everyone everywhere, how do you think about your career and where you are in this space and where you will be adding value, keeping the idea of being human in it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the opportunity, right, is that how do we sort of move up that value chain? So it's no longer about, hey, we're just creating, lots of content for this space. It's more about how we're thinking around this space. What's the sort of the creative aspect that we can bring into this? Can we start to use more of the, the data and the insights at our disposal to help drive and help clients reach an optimal business outcome? So it's probably more about the doing and more about the thinking, helping sort of pave the way, develop the roadmaps for clients, and help them navigate and tackle the future as well.
And people are going to get job titles like prompter in chief.
I don't know if it's
trying
prompter in chief, but certainly they're changing. I've heard some wild and wacky ones. I'm sure you have as well.
I've seen some terrible ones where I'm just like, you've got to be joking.
Yeah.
But so our theme for the podcast is more about the human side of being a founder, and I wanted to ask you the business model of agencies. I'm also a marketer. I've worked with a lot of agencies. The founders are always a very unique type of stressed because the business model is like you're always trying to get new business,
hustling,
and it like never ends. And agencies are so like structured in a way that if the founder steps back, like the rest of the business really does get impacted. So how do you deal with that?
Really, really great question, actually. It's one that I've been grappling with several years. But the model for Paper and Spark was, how do we sort of really turn that agency model on its head? Like, they're totally broken models, right? So they're very people-driven. They're very, very sort of hands-on. They are really reliant on a few people. So when we when I did sort of found Paper and Spark, it was how do I bring the best people in the mix, really sort of senior experts in their game, but give them skin in the game so they actually feel like they're a part of the business. So I'm not the only one sort of responsible for things. The load is shared. The team very much feel like they are a part of the business. As I said, everyone has a bit of skin in the game. If I succeed, if they succeed, we all succeed as a business, and I think that does take the pressure off being a founder-led agency. We approach things differently, which we're really proud of as well. Team decision-making is shared. Clients are really brought into the tent. It's a sort of a very transparent way of operating, which not a lot of agencies have typically done, but I can see more and more heading in that direction as well as the world shifts rapidly.
I do want to drill back into that for a second, because I think as leaders, especially in startups, you start to put teams together, it's not a skill you necessarily have. So how do you approach that? How do you make it inclusive? How do you make sure that people have their voices heard? Because often you can end up in a situation where you're the founder, you should know, kind of tell us where to go, Messiah. So it's a very different circle that you're creating.
Yeah, I think you really sort of have to bring that human element into it to go really sort of understand as a founder your strengths, what you're really good at and what you're not at, and find those people who can do a better job than you. So my mission has always been, can I bring people in this business that either complement my skills or can far outdo anything I can, to really sort of bring the balance. I mean, we're a relatively flat structure, so people really feel empowered to have a say. We sort of try and promote from within, and most importantly, we're trying to bring a diverse team as possible. So not everyone in the team has a marketing background. There are those that are externalists. There are those that are, data and insights people. There are people with like neurodiverse issues and backgrounds. So we're really sort of trying to bring as much difference to the mix to give us a better view of the world as well. So I think bringing, really sort of trying to not just complement the skills, but bringing people in with real specialist experience is certainly part of our core strength.
Zeina, you wear a lot of hats. You like a bit of side hustle, and you're also a virtual expert. I kind of think of myself as virtually an expert in that there's a heck of a lot I don't know. But tell us a little bit about these roles, because you're also chairing industry organisations, and how do you find the time to do all of this alongside, why do you do all of this?
So I think like every founder, we all have multiple side hustles. I think one of my biggest challenges is saying no to things, just like how I appeared on this podcast today. Opportunity came up, I said yes. So as you sort of start to gain experience, you really do reflect back on how you can help others succeed as well. And it's not just really a founder thing. It's really about how can I actually, help others achieve. I have this thing called the abundance mentality. So if I'm sort of really doing well within myself, within my business, within my personal life, how can I share that abundance? And that can be in lots of different ways. So that leads to lots of side hustles. So for New South Wales Innovation, I'm in their virtual expert as residence program, helping other founders start their businesses so they can book in a complimentary time to have a chat.
Yeah, this does sound like a really cool program. So for people who've not heard of it, tell us a little bit about how it works.
So it's funded by Innovation New South Wales. They pull together a bunch of specialists in their field. It could be, data and insights experts. It could be marketing. It could be go-to-market strategies, a whole bunch of things. So startups or individuals can access this free program through Innovation New South Wales to reach out to what they call their virtual experts in residence and book in a time to have a chat. And they've been really successful in rolling this program out to not just sort of CBD-based targets, but also to Western Sydney, and are growing it as well.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Makes it accessible.
Cool program. Sure does.
With doing so much and helping so many other people, how do you make sure that you are also learning and growing?
Learning and growing is probably sort of one of the key things. Well, I do lots of mentoring. So the New South Wales Innovations one piece, I do mentor walks, co-founded by Bobby Marlab. It's a great program where you walk with other like-minded mentees and have conversations to sort of help empower other women. And I do the Emerging Marketers program. It's not just because I am completely wanting to give back, which I do, but it's also an excellent way of learning and learning from others. So I sort of find that really energizes me and helps sort of keep that lifelong learning going as well.
And
I
Bobby's
also
taken
teach.
that global
Yep.
as well.
Yeah.
That's how successful, simple but
successful.
incredibly successful.
Yeah.
Again, just because it's plug week, I reckon
we're
this
plugging.
week. So yeah,
All right,
get a
we're
plug
plugging.
in for the mentor walks. How does anyone get
All
involved
right.
in that?
I think just sort of reach out and register as a mentor. So they have walks in Sydney, starting at the Opera House monthly. They have walks in Parramatta, Western Sydney. I know for a fact they need more mentors for that. So big shout out to any women who want to join that program and sort of around Australia. But if it's shout out week, I'd also like to plug the Australian Marketing Institute. I'm the New South Wales chair. So, and they have a brilliant program called the Emerging Marketers Program for early career marketers, again, for a 7-month-long program to match up with, career marketers who are really sort of helping to find that next generation of marketers and help support them in their career. So clearly a passion of mine. So
Fun fact is I actually attended a few mentor walks
Amazing.
as a mentee.
Time to become a mentor.
And look how you turned out.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah,
How did
look
you
at
find
me.
it?
Very difficult to wake up to
Yeah,
get.
that's the downfall,
Yeah,
right?
it's at the Opera House at like 7 a.m.
7 a.m. Yeah.
Well, that was rough. And I
Yeah.
think I did it during winter as well.
It's
It
really
was
tough.
That was really tough, but it's
Yeah.
also so nice. Like just
Yeah.
walking
It's a
around in the
beautiful spot
gardens.
that time of the year.
Yeah, and like having some good open chats with like very inspiring women.
Yeah, I mean, we just did one on Friday a few days ago last week, and 80 people turned up. I mean, it was a beautiful Friday, but unlike some founders, I'm not an early morning person. My power hour is in the evening. I don't start meetings or work until like 9:30, 10 a.m. So that was a real challenge for me, but still very gratifying to meet some other women.
Now, I do want to ask you, Zeina,
Yep.
about storytelling. It's
Sure.
your passion, it's your skill. What makes good storytelling? I talk to founders about this
Yep.
all the time, and I
Yep.
say, this is part of your core being.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
give us your take.
Yeah, so we really help brands tell their stories and founders as well. And what we do know is that individually, we will remember a story 22 times more likely than facts and data alone. We know stories release dopamine, cortisol, all of those things. So if I had to ask you guys to cast your mind back to one of your earliest memories of being told a story, I guarantee you within 30 to 60 seconds, an immediate memory will come to mind. Not just a memory, you'll feel emotion, you'll probably remember the person who told you the story and all the feels with it. So really what makes a great story is sort of finding that authentic hook and angle and a way to connect with the audience that you're trying to connect with, and we call that the connective tissue. So how do we sort of dig deep to find that really authentic brand story that we can help you tell and get others to tell it on your behalf? And I have this Indian Hopi American proverb, which I love, and we use at Paper and Spark, those that tell the stories rule the world. And, looking at our sort of First Nations people, we've been telling stories for thousands and thousands of years. So it really is embedded in everyone's sort of DNA and psyche as well.
Absolutely. Reading anyone interesting?
Gosh, I'm actually listening to audiobooks at the moment. I really love autobiographies, but I love tennis, I love basketball. I've just finished reading a number of autobiographies, but I'm listening to Jelena Docic's autobiographies, so which I love, Unbreakable and Fearless. So something really, really recent is listening to a couple of her books and her stories.
So do you prefer like the underdog or the hero story or rags to riches?
I think they're all
They're all
great
good?
books of storytelling, right? But who doesn't love an underdog rags to riches story, right?
Yeah, it's the underdog and the hero combined.
Yeah.
But Yelena's story is extraordinary.
So that's the most recent
yeah.
and extraordinary, right? And being sort of a local one, following her. And I love her tennis commentary.
Well, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks
All
for
the
the
best with
invite.
Paper and Spark, and we'll see you at 7. Well, you won't see me, but you'll
7
drag her
a.m.
out
at
of
the Opera
bed.
House.
Might see
I'll
you
ring
there
her
at
at
the
6.
next
And,
You'll
make sure
you'll
she's
be
up.
there
Yeah.
from midnight the night before, sleeping
Yeah, I'll
on
just
the
be
steps.
heading home. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay.
you guys, I'll just wave as you sort of stride out.
Fab. Well, thank you very much for having me on.
All right. We'll be right back with Ben Ford. Welcome back to Plug Week here on Startup 360, and I'm going to kick off with superfitdad.com.au. It has been founded by the fabulous Ben Ford. He's, of course, fintech sales and strategy advisor and prominent swag hoarder. I think he and Rain Ong are probably the, what would you say, the Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers of swag.
That's a very nice way of putting it, Simon, but we are duking it out for the title of the ultimate T-shirt collection in startup/fintech land. I think
So it's a little bit more Ali Fraser, you reckon?
Probably something like that. And we do it in we're pretty, pretend to be amicable about it. When we catch up, we actually exchange T-shirts. So we sort of maintain this air.
But is that like re-gifting a gift you don't want?
It's more like Olympic badges, I reckon, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, look, it's not re-gifting gifts. Maybe you've got a duplicate, maybe you've outgrown a particular size and the time to pass that baton on. I'm a little bit bigger than Rain, so he can get the mediums, and I'm now a large.
So you need
You know
to
where to
start,
send the T-shirts.
You got to start giving him a shirt with like a box of chocolates attached.
Exactly right.
To
And I might
help him
poison
fit.
the chocolates. You never know.
All right, that was a practice question.
That was practice.
Are you ready to do 10x, Ben?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Never been readier.
Take it away.
My first question is very on theme with this. What makes a good swag shirt?
That is a very, very good question. I've been pondering this recently. I've taken a couple of good deliveries recently. One was quite a heavy-duty, oversized T-shirt from a company called William. We'll give them a plug. But
That's
also,
a night shirt, though.
It is.
A night shirt. What's a night? Like a...
It's like a shirt you wear at night.
It's a bigger, boxier T-shirt. It's more of a sort of skateboarder type vibe or a surfer type vibe.
Oh, so it's like Gen Z.
Yeah, absolutely. A nice fit and long enough over the waist, so you don't want anything that's too short that
You
reveals
don't like a crop top?
Absolutely not.
Well, given, you know, you're a super fit dad, I want to ask you about what's something that most blokes don't know about fitness.
Most guys, I think most people probably still, to some degree, underestimate the necessity as you get older of doing resistance training or weight training. Still think there's a general theme. It's changing a bit towards chronic cardio. People doing cycling, people doing running, people doing triathlons, which is great. Any movement.
Is chronic cardio a good thing or a bad thing?
Chronic cardio is a terrible thing.
Oh, okay.
And you're not necessarily getting the best bang for your buck, Simon.
Yeah.
So you can get far better results doing 20 to 30 minutes of resistance training than going out for a run for an hour and 20 minutes, which is good for the body in so many ways, but also not as good in terms of an ROI. So you could actually achieve better results with less time if you bring in some resistance or weight training.
Kind of in the vein of that, what is something that you've never done before but you want to try?
I'm fairly open-minded and liberal when it comes to ticking boxes or scratching itches. I am terrified by heights, so I'm sort of perversely into the idea of doing a parachute jump. I don't think I ever would go near one, but that's probably about as much as I can tell you on this show.
So we shouldn't... I was wondering where this was going for a second.
You give me the question.
So AJ Hackett, Bungee in Queenstown, not on the list?
Never.
Okay.
I'm just terrified of heights.
I'm going to get serious for a minute, though, because there's been some moments in your life, and one of them was a few years back, where you experienced burnout in the most horrible way, and you lost your sister-in-law, Vanessa, who was a high-powered UK lawyer. I want to ask, what's the message for founders when it comes to overwork and dealing with it? Because I think a lot of people are feeling this, and, you know, it's something you've probably thought about a fair bit.
Yeah. I genuinely thank you for bringing that up, Simon. I've sort of written about this a fair bit, and we were speaking before. I've sort of witnessed this firsthand with a lot of friends who are founders. I'm by no means an expert, although having sort of lived through a fairly traumatic experience. I guess the scary thing with what happened with Vanessa was the warning signs, although some were there weren't too many. So I guess it's sort of the invidious nature of these things sort of creeping up on you, depression creeping up on you, and then just the sort of amplified effect of working 18-hour days, day after day, week after week. And then potentially sort of the lip service that was paid afterwards by in this case, the legal profession. There was a huge outpouring of sort of grief and sort of hand-wringing, but a huge amount of sort of commentary around what could or should be done, but sort of, I don't know genuinely if anything's actually particularly changed.
Would you have those moments where everyone throws their hands up in the air and then it's right back to it?
100%. I think I saw there was a meme where exactly that. Everyone was sort of had concern and everyone was upset, but it's not an easy problem to fix. I think sort of the culture in some of these places is so endemic that there's not an easy or a quick way to fix it. I think some measures and some initiatives have been introduced, particularly by her firm and others, but I'm fairly sure that there's a bit more that could be done. How that applies to startup founders, I get the sense that certainly from the founders that I know, there are groups in place, there are sort of courses that people go on that do sort of shine a bit of a light onto this. But I don't think it's an easy answer, and I don't know what's going to change it in the immediate term.
A lot of, and this is like painting with a broad brush, but a lot of men aren't comfortable with their feelings, other people's feelings, asking if someone is okay. What advice would you have for someone who maybe suspects that a friend isn't okay?
It's a really interesting question. I'm going back to how I sort of dealt with the aftermath of that, and there were times when I definitely wasn't okay in dealing with it. My partner was incredibly supportive, but there were two people within the fintech or the startup ecosystem who did reach out, and I ignored their calls, as often you do. You sort of go to ground a little bit, you bury your head in the sand. And these two people in particular, and I think they know who they are, and one of them just simply did not take no for an answer. Even when I was ignoring his calls and his messages, he said, "I'm meeting you at this time, you'll be there, and we'll go for breakfast, and we'll talk about it." And he shared some pretty tough experiences that he'd been through in a similar vein. And there was another guy, a fintech veteran, and he did something similar, and he basically ordered me to meet him at the pub around the corner from where we both live, in Clovelly or Randwick. And he said, he asked how the family was doing, and then he sort of looked me dead in the eye and he said, "How are you? I don't want to know about them really. I'm just interested in how you were doing." And it was sort of, to your point about people, it can be very difficult to ask that question or go beyond the sort of superficial or, you're okay, but actually, no, don't just palm me off and say, "I'm doing okay. How are you actually feeling, or how are you actually doing?" So I sort of remembered that, or I do remember it, and I really sort of felt and was extremely grateful for them actually sort of kind of sticking the proverbial boot in, but in a very good way, to sort of pull me out of a hole and say, "Look, let's just have a chat about it, and I'm here to listen to what you've got to say."
I think that's great advice for all blokes. It's like, it's the seizing that moment and saying, right, here's what we're going to do.
Correct.
And that, I've had that experience, and I was incredibly grateful too. So well done to those blokes. What's the fintech idea you wish had been yours?
That's a good question.
Well, look, as you probably know, I'm a huge fan of the idea of there being one money app to rule them all, the super app.
A few people have got the similar fandom.
Exactly right. And, ever since I got into this sort of data game and the power of fintech and the sort of democratization of financial services, and I was lucky enough to work at a company like Frollo, I think Revolut is sort of going somewhere towards that. I think there was Tinkoff in Russia that had a really good, maybe a complete sort of money management app that did a whole bunch of stuff. I think there's been some cool apps. Ant Financial possibly in Asia before it got closed down from memory. But that would be the one that sort of I was all in on. So I've got this percolating in my mind at the moment. There's a sort of PFM for grown-ups type idea. I've actually had a couple of conversations with people who've had a similar idea recently. I think if you could have a sort of money management tool that was so slick and had the design sort of principles and aesthetics of, say, an Apple solution, I think that could be pretty cool. You could potentially charge a subscription for that if it delivered enough value. But it would effectively be an amalgamation of a few other things, but on steroids.
I'm always in awe of how incredible WeChat is for like
Correct.
just how much it does.
Yep.
So my next question's a fun one. You wrote a great piece about the 6 type of people not to be on LinkedIn.
I didn't know which piece you were going to talk about, mention there, but yeah, no, that one's good.
It's been reposted on Startup Daily.
Okay.
So if you don't want to be the really cliche LinkedIn user, what do you think people should be using LinkedIn for?
I think creating some kind of original content, I think, is key. If you're just curating content or you're posting other articles with some annoying comment or not even a comment next to it, that's kind of a waste, really. You're not sort of creating anything. If you've never created anything original in your entire life, kind of what's the point in even posting on LinkedIn, to my mind? So I think you've got to be creating original content. I think there's kind of this trend or thematic now that sort of LinkedIn kind of feels like a pretty uncool Facebook for nerdy types who never had any friends at school. I'm probably one of those people. So I sort of...
I think that was always LinkedIn, though.
It is, but I think it's gotten worse. I think posting pictures of the beach, posting pictures of your family, no, don't really care. Posting pictures of having meetings overlooking the ocean, it's just pointless.
What about sort of 28 photos of you with everyone at a startup festival?
Are you talking about me specifically?
Not wanting anything.
Someone showing off their T-shirt collection, maybe.
No, that's very, very cool, and that should be encouraged. I agree. The proliferation of people going crazy at festival. I think it's all about picking your battles. So pick maybe your 2 or 3 photos, best photos, and leave it at that, rather than an album that no one's going to look through and no one really cares about.
Ben,
Sorry.
what's the thing about fintech that really gives you the shits?
I think it's in, where do we start? I think there's a bit of a dearth of new fintech ideas coming through. And I'm going to say, I went to an event last night, an open banking event, and it became apparent listening to a guy who was the godfather of open banking in the UK. They had him on stage doing a really interesting fireside chat with Scott Farrell, who's the godfather. Our godfather. So we had the 2 godfathers, the 2 dons on stage talking about open banking. And the sad thing for me was the sheer bewilderment and dismay from Dr. Bill Roberts, the English godfather, about he was almost lamenting the fact that in Australia there is this unhealthy tension between the fintechs and the banks, which he sort of seemed to intimate is sort of stifling the adoption of open banking. And I just thought that's really, really sad, because that sort of goes against everything that's fintech related, is everything that fintech stands for in opening up financial services and making it more egalitarian and fairer, and all of the stuff that Scott Farrell wrote about competition and all the rest of it. So that kind of gave me, it was more, I came away a little bit dejected, if I'm honest.
I feel like we need a happy question.
I'm coming home with a happy question, but you've got the penultimate one.
Okay. What's your favourite way to wind down?
I live near the beach. I exercise on the beach, go for a swim, go for a coffee. That's kind of winding up in the morning, but it's kind of my morning ritual. Every morning for the last probably 5 or 6 months, I've been working out, swimming, and going for a coffee on the beach. In terms of winding down, I'm a bit of a sucker for trash TV. And actually, no, I want to sort of rescue myself there. I'm a sucker for murder mysteries. English murder mysteries on TV.
So you're watching Vera while you're on a treadmill?
No, so exercise in the morning, Vera in the evening, and luckily I found maybe the one other person in the world who shares my love of Poirot, Midsummer Murders, Vera, Silent Witness, Miss Marple, and all the rest of it, so we can watch TV to our heart's content before we fall asleep.
I love Silent Witness, but that's pretty gory on occasion.
It absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us and for diving in deep on what has been some tougher moments. So I want to go to the other side. What brings you the greatest joy?
Playing sport with my son.
Yeah?
Yeah. Having a little mate who I can play sport with, who we can mess around at the beach with, and then we can go out for oysters with, because he's actually got a bit of a penchant for oysters and fine dining.
You've trained him up.
I've trained him up. I've created a monster, but he's a good little monster.
Fantastic. Oh, that sounds like a great way to spend the afternoon. Mate, may life be filled with Sydney rocks over Pacifics, the occasional bell-on.
Absolutely right. Nailed it.
And I'll see you down at Narooma, my old stomping ground, sometime for the Narooma Oyster Festival.
We'll be there in May the 4th, as usual. Yep. So, no, look forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Ben Ford, thanks for joining us on Startup 360 and 10X.
Pleasure. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for joining us on Startup 360. If you're keen to listen more, you'll find it on Apple, Spotify, and of course YouTube. Don't forget to read startupdaily.net for all the ANZ tech news for free. We've got a free newsletter as well. How much more could you want? This show is a Pinstripe Media production. Thank you so much to Matt Johnson for producing and editing today's episode. Does such a great job. And switching makes us look so good, so smart, so schmick. AI couldn't do it as well as Matt, I can tell you now.
Getting that close-up of my book.
Yeah, absolutely. See, he knows how to do plug week. Thanks also to Ella Walsh, James Vass, Ausbiz, and Favanta for their support. We'll see you next Friday. Bye for now. Have a great week.